Now, a lot of you out there are trying to decide whether to buy an inflatable touring board or an inflatable race board. Now, obviously, if you're just going to go racing, the inflatable race board is going to be the fastest, most competitive board out there. That's what we're going to highlight in this video, as well as comparing the two boards, the Shark SUP touring board range and the Shark SUP race board range. And also, the Shark Race SUP is a board that's actually very stiff, and it's got some interesting features on the board too that's worth checking out. So Shark SUP have been making inflatable paddleboards for a few years now. We tested some last year, and they're aiming at the sort of mid to high price point of the inflatable market. They've got a few really nice shapes of designs of boards out there. The race board is definitely one of them, and they've got quite a wide range of SUPs. So the boards we've got here and the boards we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about the touring range and the race range. We've got two of the touring boards here, and we've got one of the race boards here. The touring boards come in 11/8 size and two 12'6" sizes. The 11/8 and 12'6 comes in at 30 inches wide, but also there's another 12'6 that comes in at 32 inches wide. The recommended retail price of the touring board range starts at around $900, and you get a bag, pump and repair kit for that package price. The race board range consists of three boards as well. The 12'6", the smaller board, is 27 wide. Then they do two 14-foot boards, one of 27 wide, which is like we've got here, and also one at 25 wide as well. And the recommended retail price of the race board starts around $1,000, and the same as the touring range, you get a bag and a pump and a repair kit as well. So we will talk about what you get on the boards and have a look at the bags and the pumps very soon. But first off, let's have a look at the outline shape of the race board compared to the touring board, because there is obviously a 12'6 touring board and there obviously is a 12'6 race board, so there's a bit of crossover there, but really you can see straight away there's a big old difference in the width and the slender profile of the race board compared to the wider bodied touring board. Now, you might have heard me say it before in some other videos, the longer the board, the more glide you're going to have, the easier it's going to be to put one paddle stroke in and you travel further along the water. The downside to that is the harder it's going to be to turn around, so the more limited you're going to be to going in a straighter line, which for most people is absolutely fine. If you're paddling 3 miles or even a mile down the river every single time you go out, turning around isn't really going to be an issue. More width equals more stability. The wider the board goes, the way more stable it's going to be. Therefore, the 12'6 by 32 touring board, or the Traveller as they're all called, they are going to be way more stable than the narrow race boards. You're going to be able to put a lot more weight on them, physically be heavier, and also put more load on them with bags and things to carry on your board. The downside to width is it does reduce the speed of the board. It makes the board a lot slower to push through the water. Doesn't really affect the turning side of it so much, but really the width of the board does slow you down. The wider the board, the more drag it's going to have, which is why the Shark SUP Sailfish, which is its proper race board name, is so much thinner than the touring boards. You're going to get so much more speed per stroke. And also combine that with the overall length of the board, it's going to be a much more effortless board to paddle. But the real question we get asked is, how does the real width of the board make a difference to real world paddling? As in, how many times do you have to turn around in a session? If you're literally just going to turn around once, as I've just said, the race board, even if you're looking to cover longer ground, further distance, and just paddle faster in general, not necessarily go racing, can be a good option to look at. But if you're looking at trying to do multiple turns, trying to get back into more of your step back turns, trying to progress a little bit more with your footwork, then definitely a wider base board like the touring range is going to be way easier to get your head around and your feet around those sort of maneuvers. So when it comes to deciding on what sort of board you're looking at, and particularly what sort of outline shape of board you're looking at, like we're looking at these two here, the best thing to do is be realistic about what sort of paddling you want to do. If you don't ever want to go in the surf, if you just want to paddle on flat water pretty much all of the time, and you're not really looking at turning around very much in a session, and you are weighing around the sort of 85 kilograms, then a slender, narrow race board will still be okay for you, but not the sort of comfort and width that where you're going to be walking around the board a lot. It's going to offer you a lot of stability. That is where you're going to be looking at the wider based touring board. The touring board is obviously going to take more weight. It's got a bit more width again for the stability, so you're going to be able to load it up much more. It's going to be a lot more user friendly for stepping back on the tail because of the extra width, maybe even catching a few waves as well, so a little bit more round base. So really, if you're looking towards flat water covering some ground, you could be looking at the wider 27 wide race board. Otherwise, you want a bit more of an all-round base board, maybe with a little bit more stability, potentially even take a kid or a dog up at the front, then the touring board range is a much better range to look at. Still happy to paddle some distance, but it's going to give you way more security and stability than it would do with this race board. So let's have a look at the features and fittings you get with these two ranges of boards. The Touring Traveller range has the bungees up at the front, as you would expect, but they're a little bit bigger than the race board, allowing you to put more cargo under the front there. Very standout Shark SUP graphics printed onto the PVC. They're printed onto the top of the board, not onto the bottom of the board, so it gives you a bit more hard wearing there, doesn't rub off the bottom of the board. The EVA deck pad that comes with all of the Shark SUPs may look different in colours, but it's all got the Shark SUP sort of embossed logos in the EVA deck pad to give you a bit of extra grip. It's a nice little feature, shows a little bit of quality. It's a nice large EVA deck pad that goes right towards the tail. Looking at the bottom of the board, you've got a nose D-ring, which is great for touring, and moving back to the back of the board, you've got Shark SUP's new US foldable fin box. That way it makes it super easy to roll up, goes in a bag nice and small. It's a really nice feature. We did a sort of quick look video on this. All of the boards have the US foldable fin box, and it is a great little system. And the boards also come with the Shark SUP quick fix fin system, which is a new fin system for 2019. And the recommended PSI pressure for these Shark SUP boards is from 15 to 25 PSI. So it can take a large amount of pressure, which shows the quality and the materials and the construction process that they put into these boards, that they're happy to inflate them up to 25 PSI. They recommend around 15 PSI, which for most people is absolutely fine to get people on the water. The stiffness of these boards is pretty outstanding. We'll go over about the race board in a minute, but the Touring Traveller board only deflected 14 millimeters when we put it through our deflection test. Remember, the deflection test we do on all our inflatable boards is where we put them on a gap of 1.5 meters apart, and we put 75 kilograms of weight in the center, and then we measure how much the board deflects or drops in the middle. So the Touring Traveller board all dropped 14 millimeters, which is a very respectable drop. It obviously shows you the materials that they're using, the fusion technology stuff that they're putting into these boards is standing out well, and the double layers of PVC around the rails are making the boards nice and stiff. So moving on to the features and fittings that the Shark SUP Sailfish Raceboard range has got. So this is a 14 by 27 wide that we've been testing. It's still got the nice big EVA deck pad, different colorways to the touring range, still got the Shark SUP logos sort of embossed in it, looks really smart. Comfy neoprene padded carry handle, but moving back towards the back of the board, it's got a small kick pad for the back of your foot there, or if you're doing your step back turns, which is definitely a good thing to have when it comes to race boards, because the tail is so much more narrower. You need to know where your foot is where you're doing step back turns. Up at the front, you've got your small bungee straps for storing stuff, drink, flip-flops, something lightweight that really isn't going to weigh very much, because there isn't much width of the board there to hold a larger amount of weight. The graphics on the Shark SUP raceboard are very standout, very different from any other thing on the market. You get the same US foldable fin system and Shark SUP quick fix fin that fits into the system really well. The two standout things on this raceboard that are pretty much overlooked and don't really get spoken enough about really in the SUP market. One is the nose, which we've tested on the last year's product. They've kept the water cut nose. It worked really well on last year's board. It does part the water. It has way more of a wave piercing nose like you would find on a harder board. It works the same way. It keeps the full length of the water line, which is a really important thing. The more water line, the more length of your board is in the water, the faster you're going to be paddling. So it keeps that full 14 foot of board in the water at all times. The nose on that works really well, really good punching into waves, and it also stops the board from flexing if you go into any bumps as well. The other thing which is really worth noting is the PVC carbon strip going down the middle of the board. The stringer, in effect, does make a massive difference to the deflection of this board. So we put this board to our deflection test. We put it up to 18 PSI, which is the recommended PSI pressure for this. Again, it takes 15 to 25 PSI, but recommended 18 because you're racing, you want a bit more stiffness. This board only dropped 11 millimeters, okay? The stiffest iSUP we've ever tested dropped 7 millimeters. So it really is right up there with the top end of stiff boards, and it's not right up there at the top end price, is it? It's way stiffer than some other way more expensive boards in the market. So if you're looking for a stiff race board that's got a slender profile and a nice nose shape, this Shark SUP Sailfish race board is a board you should be looking at. So looking at the bag and the pump that the boards come with, because they both come with the same bag and pump. The bag is a pretty heavy duty material bag. It's not got wheels, it's not got any padding around the back, it's got some basic shoulder straps. It's going to get your board in, it's going to keep it nice and clean. You're going to be able to walk it moderate distances, probably more so because the boards actually aren't so heavy. The touring board weighs 10 kilograms and the race board only weighs 11 kilograms, so it's quite a lot of board and quite a lot of stiff board for the weight, and putting it in the bag, you're going to be able to walk moderate distances but not super far distances. So it is adequate, and it's going to fit the board in nicely, and it is going to keep your board nice and clean. So looking at the pump it comes with a Shark SUP branded pump. We've seen this pump with other packages. It's a very tried and tested pump. It's a two-way pump, so it pumps on the upstroke and on the downstroke, and then when the pumping gets hard on the upstroke, you can switch it over to just pump on the downstroke. It is going to easily get the amount of air you want to get into the board to the pressure you want to get it in. It is going to take a while because these are fairly big volume boards, but the pump is lightweight, small enough to put in your bag and take places. So it's adequate, not the quickest, but it is going to get the air in the board absolutely fine. So to finish off with pros and cons and value for money for both these boards, well, pros comes with nice features, nice foldable fin box, nice Shark SUP quick fix fin. I really like the stiffness of both the boards, but really the race board is a standout stiffness with the extra stringer down the middle there and the nose. It is going to be a fairly competitive inflatable paddleboard that you can race on. And cons, well, personally the graphics I'm not 100% about. I do like the race board graphics a little bit more than the touring board, but as always, it is a very personal thing. And value for money, well, both these boards are at the mid to premium price point market. The race board for me is 100% worth the money. Really nice features on the board, nice and stiff. Love that nose shape. The touring board is acceptable at that price point, but also these boards do come with 3-year warranties. Again, there are a few brands that do that, but it is a big standout feature. So yes, you can be looking at buying these boards confidently with that price point. I really hope that's answered some questions about touring inflatables against race inflatables. If you've used these boards, or you like the look of these boards, or even if you don't like the look of these boards, let us know in the customer survey on the SUPboarder page. It's really important that we understand what you think of the products, and then we can also get back to Shark SUP, how they can improve them for next year. Until next time, check out SUPboarder, SUPboarder Pro, and we'll see you on YouTube. Give this video a like if you liked it. Thank you very much.